Hi, Phil. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
And of course, I have to start with a note-taking question, right? Well, I let me tell this story. I grew up learning. My father used to tell me this all the time. He was always saying, "Take notes, write it down, because you will forget it." And when I started working, it was evident that I would forget things, and I learned to take notes way before Evernote. I was taking notes in many other ways, paper and other software. But today, I think that productivity or accomplishing starts with taking good notes. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I actually was always pretty disorganized. I didn't take a lot of notes. I never I never liked filing things, organizing things. I never really had a system, so my desk was always very messy. I was a pretty disorganized person. I like to pretend that I was organized inside my head, but the outside world was very messy. And that was one of the things that we tried to do at Evernote, was to try to make it so that even pretty disorganized people could be as productive as people who really liked taking notes and writing things down. So we tried to make something that was really easy. That was kind of as good for people like me that didn't really previously take a lot of notes,
Uh-huh.
as for people who did. And I think it was really good. I really got used to using it, to just throwing everything in there. That's why we made like the web clipper and stuff like that, so
Hmm.
that you didn't really have to think too much. You just put stuff in there. And it definitely changed my habits. So I take a lot more notes now. Still 15 years later or whatever it's been. And yeah, I agree. I think taking good notes is a very important part of being productive. Not the only
Yeah,
part,
and
but an
I,
important
I remember in one conference, or maybe on an article I read, that you didn't have a lot of notebooks. It was hard to start with Evernote at first because it didn't have the spaces, the little boxes to organize things. And I think this is another thing that our parents, at least my parents, taught me. They taught me to organize, and
part. Yeah.
back then, organize was put things in little boxes and spaces, and organize specifically, label and group things.
Yep.
And I think technology now makes things much different, and to information and to things. Because if we take a look on how Amazon organized their warehouses, there is no organization there. It's all spread. I don't know if you know how they organize it. Are you
Yeah. A
aware?
little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy, right? They use technology to find information and find things they're not organizing in a traditional way. Do you think that's better?
I think there's maybe two different concepts. There's the concept of being organized, and then there's the
Hmm.
concept of organizing, like the act
Hmm.
of organizing. And my goal is always to be organized, to sort of get the
Okay.
benefits of it without actually having to spend a lot of time on it. I think there's a group of people. We did some research about this at Evernote. And there's definitely a group of people that enjoy the act of organization. They like it. They enjoy putting labels on things, putting things into boxes. They enjoy thinking about the organizational taxonomy and how they're going to structure things. There are people who derive pleasure from this, and that's great. I think those people are pretty lucky. I think if you learn how to derive pleasure from the act of organization, then that's a useful thing to like. I think that's like you can do
There's
pretty
even
well.
jobs for that, right?
Yeah. But I was never like that. I was never a person that derived particular enjoyment out of the act of organization. And I think if you look at most kind of productivity systems before Evernote, they really were intended for people. They were marketed and built by people who liked organization and for people who liked the act of organization. They give you all sorts of flags and labels and colors
Hmm.
and stuff like that. And what we try to do is to say, well, that's fine. We have a percentage of our users that are like that. I don't think it's a very big percent. I don't think it's more than 10% of people. No, but they're very vocal and they're very good customers. But for the rest of 90% of people, we said, all right, how do we get them to have the benefits of being organized, to be organized without actually having to do the work of organization? Um, and yeah, a lot of that relies on, well, first we wanted to make it very, very easy to capture something. so that you don't have to think very much about whether or not you're gonna how you're gonna write it down or whether you want to capture it. So I wanted to make it just very simple, just capture something.
Mhm.
A big part of that was, I mean, it's very common sense now, but when we were starting with Evernote, it was pretty unique. Was just all the synchronization, the fact that I could like take a quick note on any device and it automatically appears on all my devices, and I don't have to like think about it. Like that's yeah, it's table stakes now. It's common, but back then that
Yeah,
was a very
I
big deal.
remember back then, even Apple didn't have that. We couldn't
Yeah.
synchronize Apple Notes. Evernote could do it and Apple couldn't.
And even if you set up, there's you could set up synchronization beforehand before Evernote, but it was always a very cumbersome process. You have to think about FTP servers and copying things over. And like if you're a programmer, you could do it. But again, only if you were already enjoyed organizing things would you actually go through the trouble of that.
Uh-huh.
The other thing is that the fact that you can just take a picture. See if you like had a whiteboard after a meeting or a business card and you wanted to remember it, you don't have to bother like writing it down. You could just take a picture with your phone and then you could search in it because we were one of the first to have text search, OCR. The web clipper. So if you saw something on the web, you could just highlight a portion, push one button, and capture it. So these were all things that we kind of made popular, so that it was to reduce the friction of capturing something. Um, and they always had this important line of we didn't want to make it automatic to capture something. So there always had to be like a tiny bit of friction because I didn't want my Evernote notebook to become the same as my email inbox. Like my email inbox is useless to me because it's hundreds of thousands of things that I didn't choose to put there, that like somebody else added for me, right? Somebody decided that they were going to send something and it appears in my inbox. We didn't want that for Evernote. We wanted Evernote to be like everything that was in there. I decided that I wanted to put in there, but so we wanted there to be enough friction to make a decision. But from the point of the decision to the point of putting it in there, we wanted that to be as easy as possible. And that worked really well. And then once things were in there, then yeah, I personally relied on search overwhelmingly. So
Mhm.
I had like one main notebook and a few, I still have like one big notebook in Evernote and a few smaller ones. And for the most part, I just search for things and it's fine.
It's interesting you saying that little friction. I don't remember that back from back then, you saying that, but that's very interesting because I would have some clients that they would like to create automation to send everything to all
Yeah,
emails to Evernote, and I would
yeah,
say, "You're just transferring the problem from one place to
exactly.
another."
That's right.
And that's a very clever way to put it. You have to add friction to block people from doing this terrible mistake of moving all things from one place to another.
Yeah. One of my
And
co-founders, Andrew Sinkov, who's ran marketing for us, he had a really brilliant way of thinking about it. He basically said, a lot of systems, a lot of software, when when you make it, especially for company, especially for like business software, you try to make it so that it exactly satisfies the requirements of the customer, so that it's like a hand in glove. It's like a perfect fit.
okay.
And he said, when you do that, when you make something that's like a perfect fit, it's actually not very desirable most of the time because your needs change and your habits change. And something that started out as a perfect fit, within a few months, it's not a perfect fit anymore. It's like doesn't quite fit because you want to do something different or you didn't realize something at the time. And then within a year or two, it's actually like extremely cumbersome and it's just dead. It's just tech debt. Like you don't want to use it. It started out being this like perfect custom make.
Uh-huh.
It's like you made something out that fit exactly what you needed today, but tomorrow you need something a little bit different and it doesn't work anymore. And those products tend not to be really very much beloved. And what he said is what we should do with Evernote is like Evernote is like a 90% fit. Like we give you this thing and it's like 90% fits what you need, but like that last 10% you have to do. The last 10% is on the user to figure out exactly how to tailor it, how to like put it as part of your life.
Uh-huh.
And the giant advantage to that is like you feel a little bit more investment because you feel like you have to do some work, which is great. But even more importantly, you understand how that last 10% works so that as your needs change, you just change it naturally. And so it always stays a good fit for you, even as your own requirements and habits and jobs and everything changes. And I thought that was a very good insight. That
Yeah,
wasn't
it
my
is.
idea. That was Andrew's idea. It was
Yeah,
just a
that's
brilliant way of
pretty
looking at
interesting.
it.
And it has everything to do with agile. that you everything changes all the time, and I was listening to you talk. I don't remember when and what and where, but you're talking about giving power to your employees, to people that work to you. So it's also another agile thinking, and I particularly like agile. I think there's a lot of good there. So it's interesting that this analogy of the glove, yeah. And let's talk a little bit about AI. Once you also said that the smarter you get, the less you want to kill people. I love that. I love that. That's so simple and so logic. I would say that I would go further and say the older I get, the more I respect life in
Yeah.
general. I want to preserve every being. So I think that's so clever. Do you still believe that? Let me tell another story to make you think a little bit about that quote. The other day I was talking to my stepmother. I was explaining her about the algorithms, what's the name, the amplification of the algorithms,
Mhm.
and telling her that I'm getting not to like social media anymore because of that, and I was complaining about social media, and she stopped and looked at me and she said, well, what does that say about us? So it's not really, maybe it's not the algorithm, maybe it's not the social media, maybe it's us.
Yeah, I think probably what I was talking about back then was there's always a panic every few years. There's like a new panic about this in the AI space that we're going to make a super intelligent AI and it's going to become conscious and sentient and it's going to be so much smarter than people and it's going to immediately decide to kill people because if you were super smart, obviously the right thing to do would be to kill all the people.
Yeah, that was the context.
Yeah,
You're right. That was the context.
and I never like I'm not particularly afraid of that. I think there's lots of other problems. I'm not particularly afraid of that because I think that again, as you said, as your mother said, that tells us a lot more about how we think of ourselves. Like we have such a low opinion about people, about our society, about our problems that we think that well, obviously, if there was something that was super smart, it would just want to kill all of us. And that's a much bigger problem. Like we don't have to worry about the AI doing that. We should worry about people doing that.
We are already doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think we're projecting our own
Hmm.
guilt
Hmm.
onto the AI. And I think, yeah, like if there really was a super conscious, super intelligent AI, why do we automatically think that it would want to destroy human civilization as opposed to being compassionate and wanting to preserve it and so on. But I do think there's a lot of problems with AI. I mean, that was many years ago when I said that
Hmm.
probably, and
Yeah.
I think the current generation of AI, especially these like large language models, the generative AI, they have many interesting problems that I am actually quite worried about. I don't think they're problems of like sentience or consciousness. I don't think we're anywhere close to like having an AI that's like super smart. In fact, I think that's the problem is that we're not anywhere close to it, but people maybe think we are. Um, the real problem, I think, of a lot of the popular AIs right now is that they make it extremely easy to generate very convincing lies, but they make it very difficult to actually detect what's true and what's not. And so we've made it exponentially easier to lie than to detect a lie. And that's a problem. It's not a problem. Like the AI is not
Uh-huh.
evil for that. It's just like it's going to be
Yes.
used in all sorts of ways that are I think, going to be unpleasant for us in the next few years until we
Yeah,
figure out how to make AIs that are good at detecting the truth.
even the deep fake videos and voice, and again, this is a human thing, not the AI thing, right?
Right. Yeah. But the tools, the AI tools we're making are easier to use to lie.
Hmm.
And I think we need like a new Turing test. The Turing test was sort of the original, test for AI, which is actually unfortunate because the Turing test right from the beginning has an element of deception in it. The Turing test was can you make an AI that could fool a human into thinking that the human was talking to another human? So you basically
Hmm.
you could make an AI that's indistinguishable in conversation from a person, and that for a long time that was like the gold standard, and that's been mostly achieved. I mean, there's lots of
Yes.
AIs now that can
Yes.
do this. The problem is that it was always kind of a stupid test. It was a stupid goal. Why would we start an industry with a goal of lying to people? And the current AIs are very good at that. They're very good at being convincing, but they're
Uh-huh.
not actually able to be truthful. because they don't think. They don't have like a symbolic system of thoughts. There's no facts. They're not constrained by the real world. They just kind of hallucinate. They just hallucinate words, but the words are very convincing. And so the problem is we've made all this technology that makes it very, very easy to just generate very convincing words and eventually images. But they're not connected to reality, and it's very hard to actually tell what's true and what's not,
Uh-huh.
and getting harder.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about the Turing test like that. Yeah, we started with a lie.
Yeah, the whole
Yeah,
industry was premised on this idea that can we make a machine lie convincingly? And you have
yeah.
to think like, why was that ever a good idea?
And it was early. I was checking the pictures from the conferences. There is one you and Alan Turing on a slide. I don't know. I don't remember what you were talking about, but
Yeah,
he, he, maybe something like this.
I think I was probably talking about we had a. I mean, I haven't thought about this in years. So you're bringing back a lot of memories for me. I think we had a big theme at Evernote that we were calling AI, but the A stood for augmented intelligence instead of artificial. And I kind of said that the goal of AI is not to replace humans. It's not to make a thing that's smarter than humans. It's to augment human intelligence. So the AI augmented intelligence is the person and the computer together is much smarter than a person can be.
Okay, that's
Um, and
interesting.
I think that was the idea, that it was really about it was the word artificial is kind of a weird word here. It should really be about augmenting human intelligence.
Oh, and that brings me to a question about that because back then, and this is maybe this is what you were talking about because this was when you released Context, that feature
Yes.
that would show the related notes, and I loved that feature. It helped me a lot, really. Again, at first, I thought, "Oh my God, I don't like this. I have to have control,"
Right.
and then I start learning how that helped me. Let's say augmented reality instead of artificial reality. But I don't remember any other AI feature in Evernote. What do you attribute that to? Technology or people like me?
I mean, it depends on how you draw the line as to what's AI. It's kind of a fuzzy concept. So certainly a lot of what we were doing for image recognition was pretty deep computer vision, and some of that was AI. So well, again, it depends on what you classify. There's multiple different types of algorithms. So the work of taking a picture of a whiteboard or a business card and then being able to read it
Oh,
was very advanced for a time. And people think it's OCR, but it really wasn't OCR. It was a much harder problem. OCR, optical character recognition, is
mhm.
when you take like a document and you put it in a scanner, and because you put a document in a scanner, that there's words on there because that's
Okay.
what you did. Plus, it's a very careful. Like, you could just look at all the pixels and you can see where the words are. Take a picture with your phone of a Pizza Hut. It has no. You have to find where might there be text. So you have to say like, well, no, those are trees, and that's a car, and then this other thing. Oh, and maybe there's text over here, and then maybe it's at a wrong angle. It's got shadows, and you can kind of figure out what it might say and then index that. So there's a lot of I think AI there now. That stuff is like Apple does a great job with that now. Right? If you just take
Okay.
pictures with the
Mhm.
iPhone right now, you can like cut and paste text in there. It's really amazing. So again, what we did was, what, 15 years ago? Well, 12 years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
But it was a lot of there and that, and then obviously the context feature, and then the search. So as we got better and better at search, there was a lot of search techniques that I would classify as AI in there.
So the context had some intelligence. It was not just comparing words.
Yeah, it was using some language models to try to figure out what things were related, what things could mean. Again, this was, look, I haven't been at Evernote for 8 years, so it's been 8 years since I did much there. So I think 8 years ago it was pretty cutting edge in terms of
Yes, it
what you could
was.
do with mainstream stuff. What happened after that? I'm no longer
And I
concerned.
and I remember it really didn't matter a lot, the orientation of the picture. It would figure out the words in so many orientations. It was really good. That was really good. It still is.
Yeah, and the context thing would weigh things like what the topics were, who took the note. If you were like using Evernote for work, for business, then they would look at your team and kind of what they were doing, and so it tried to make it as useful as possible. But we really believed in again augmented intelligence, and so we never. Like,
Mhm.
we never built a voice assistant into Evernote because I think it's kind of dumb. Like, we never tried to make it like Evernote itself doesn't talk like a person. It's not trying
Mhm.
to like be an artificial intelligence. It's just supposed to have a lot of techniques in it that augment the intelligence of the person. Like, just Evernote by itself doesn't do anything. It's always
Okay.
you plus
Mhm.
Evernote. Um, but yeah,
But
that
you
was the
know,
vision.
the more I put information in Evernote, the more I want it to answer me questions,
Yeah,
my questions. The more I want to one day be able to ask something and have an answer from all of the information I store there.
that was always, and yeah, and that was always the thing that we thought about and we kind of dreamt about. Is this idea? Stepan, my co-founder in this who's had
Mhm.
the original ideas was all this was Stepan Pachikov, who was this brilliant entrepreneur and scientist, still is a brilliant entrepreneur and scientist. And we had a lot of discussions about, well, you can really do this for like maybe you use Evernote for many years and it's really like the best copy of your brain. And then like if you die, like people can still ask questions and it can kind of start like being you. And I think those are all like interesting concepts. There's several other companies created kind of after
Yeah.
the fact to
Well, I prefer
push
to
on
ask
that.
Evernote when I'm still alive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We had one of the things that we put in place pretty early was our rules about data.
Mhm.
And we said, the most important thing is the data is yours. It's not
Mhm.
ours. It's yours. It's you own it. You're giving us permission to use it to run the system, like to index it and put it on the network, that kind of stuff. That your data is protected, and your data is portable, which means you can take it with you anytime you want. And that like privacy first, like private by default design made it. We knew that it would make it much harder to like do arbitrary processing and
Um,
indexing at the back end because like we weren't trying to just collect as much data as possible and then see what we could do with it. Right? This was your information,
I
and we,
see.
we always had this test where like, would you want us to be doing random experiments and figuring stuff out and comparing it to other users' data? And most people probably wouldn't want that. So
It makes sense. It's
we
kind
decided
of
to constrain ourselves with that.
what the problem Apple has today compared to Google.
Yeah.
What Google Assistant can do and what Siri can't do. So maybe it's kind of in that line.
Yeah, and there's obviously ways to solve that for Apple because they can just buy giant data sets.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think we never got to the size where we were able to spend tens of millions of dollars buying data sets. I think this is the pattern. So every generation of companies that started is takes advantage of the previous platforms, and that's why it's actually pretty difficult for a startup to stay relevant for 10 years. Usually, there's like within that period of time, the new platforms are so much better that somebody starting new would be able to would have a massive advantage.